Hello, everybody, and welcome to Peeves and Cues, the podcast with views about cues that peeve you. My name is Lee, and with me is my co-host.
I am Anna. Hi.
Thank you very much for listening to our, I want to say inaugural podcast. Is that the right word? The right word? Oh.
Yeah. The first podcast. There we go. That's kind of a syllable limit we're comfortable with.
Yeah, right now, for sure.
This is only take 4 after 5 beers. So
beer. No thanks.
Not yet.
Yeah, so this is the for the intro, but this is a podcast where we kind of take some varying opinions from the worldwide interwebs and throw them up for people to give their thoughts and opinions on, and then we come back here and we discuss them together. For now, there's the two of us. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to have some guests on who can offer a third opinion or throw some things our way. But for now, it's just the two of us, and we'll see how we get along. But yeah, so...
We're like, now how do we start?
Well... Let's start off. How has your week been so far?
This week has actually been pretty darn good. Despite the fact that I've been spending most of it in bed playing Harvest Moon, but it's been great because I have been looking up puns for all my farmhouse animals, and I currently have a Star Wars theme. I have Chewbacca the sheep, and Han Solo the chicken, and not to mention Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I'm pretty damn pleased with myself.
Okay.
I'm Anna, and this has been my last podcast with Lee.
No, you're fine. No, I'm actually very impressed with those puns. That is... I like that a lot. You've definitely had some time on your hands. But those are very clever, though, I will admit. Obi-Wan Kenobi gets me going. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. Well.
You're welcome.
I, on the other hand, have the start of this week was pretty good, but last week was immense. So my housing provider / landlord is renovating the houses on their roster to bring them into line. This house is from the 70s. So it's still like the whole fibro outside, and I'm pretty sure it used to have an asbestos roof at some point. They got rid of that and it's now a tin roof. But yeah, it had the wooden drop windows, the ones that you push up.
The sash windows, yeah.
The sash windows, yeah, it had those, and they're like, no, we can't have those anymore. They'd been painted over so many times, so half the time they were just painted into the seating. So you barely open them.
Painted shut is awful. Yeah.
And especially with the paint that they use in these kinds of places where it's basically like latex paint.
Yeah.
So it's just that thick, quick drying stuff that just is so...
Yeah.
So yeah, they were just like, you know what? We're knocking those out and we're putting in aluminium windows. Which is fine. But with my particular peculiarities, with my mental health conditions, it was a week of sitting here, shaking immensely, trying desperately not to fall apart for nearly 5 days.
Yeah.
When
your safe place becomes the same as the outside world, it's pretty stressful, I'd imagine.
Quite literally, when they're putting holes in my wall as they remove the windows.
Bringing the outdoors indoors.
Indoors, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was loads of fun. And it's also given me a cold, which that was fun.
I didn't even put 2 and 2 together with that. I heard you saying about having all the work done, but I didn't realise they were actually knocking stuff out of it.
They took all of my windows out, and they had most of them sealed by the time they left, like inside, but outside they were still open. So there was a night where there was just drafts all through my house, and it got to me.
Yeah.
So tonight I am slightly heavily medicated to avoid it coming into the podcast, but
you sound good. Yeah,
Well, thank you, madam. I do try. That was my terrible radio voice. I promise I won't do it again. All right, so...
What is it they say? You got a face made for radio? You've
Yes,
not heard
actually,
that one before, have you?
I have been told that before, yes. I have a face made for radio.
Oh, it's a great line. I've used that one about myself. Oh.
But yeah, let's get into the meat of this one. So, for those listening, we put out before every episode a poll on our official Twitter account, which is at pod_QS. I am hoping to be able to change that at some point in the future, but for now, that's what it is. We'll let you know in the thing, because it's not really. It matches us kind of, but it's also the one that Twitter gave us immediately, and it wouldn't let me change it, and I don't know why. So hopefully I'll be able to change it soon, and we'll be at Peeves and Qs or something. But for now, it's at pod_QS, podQs. But yeah, so check that out. We put a poll up there. One of us will do that, and we'll run it for a couple of days and get some results from people, and then we'll come back here and we'll discuss it. So the poll we put up there today was, Anna, if you would be so kind.
The first official poll for the podcast account. It's a good thing that I've just pulled this up on my screen. Are you guys impressed at my psychic abilities or what? Let us talk tattoos. Do you think to have visible tattoos are unprofessional, regardless of the work, be it washing dishes or managing a business portfolio? So, should tattoos be covered up in a professional environment?
Yes.
Would you like to do the breakdown? Or would you like to first tell us why you actually came up with this poll, as this was one of yours?
Yes, this was. So, I don't have any tattoos. I want them, but there's no tattoo artist in my area, and the closest one is a 2-hour train ride away. And as much as I want one, I'm not staying overnight in a different town for a tattoo.
Perfectly reasonable. That's actually 2 out of 2 of us with no tattoos. I am, in my opinion, just far too vanilla to make them work. You've seen me from my streams. I just think me with a tattoo would be laughable. It would be try-hardish. Like, you know how you just look at some people and you just go, oh, hell no. Sorry, that was a bit of a... Do the big snap. Oh, hell no.
The big Z snap.
Sorry, but you know how you just see and just like, honestly, who are you trying to be? I just don't think that I have that. And like I said, I'm just too vanilla, so I don't have any. Personally, have friends who do love the artwork and that, but none myself. Mm-hmm. So there is no inherent bias from our perspective from there. We just don't have them.
Yeah, pretty much, reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was essentially like. The way I've been thinking it is I've been seeing for a while now in my local area there are a lot. It's a university town without wanting to give away too much. So you've got a lot of age ranges in this area. It is primarily elderly and very conservative, which is weird for a university town, but there you go. But you also have the fresh faces from around the country coming in. High school leavers all the way up to the middle-aged who are doing their degrees, going back to school. Yep. And there's a lot of different kinds, like I said, there's a lot of different kinds of people, and there's a lot of different people who are obviously figuring themselves out, and some of them are getting tattoos because it's what you do when you're young, if you have that mindset, essentially, and that ability. You get things that you like tattooed on you, or things that mean something to you.
Yeah, you're experimenting with your body automaty.
Exactly. And I was walking past a chemist or pharmacist for our overseas people, which is another thing. Do you know they think it's quaint that we call it a chemist in the US?
Really? I know sometimes in the US they actually refer to them as apothecaries.
Really?
Yeah, I have a friend who's from Atlanta, and sometimes they do. Whether it's because, we do have people who do that kind of function here who do actually mix certain things up. But they do actually have, in certain areas, they are at least in part referred to as apothecaries, which is a great old-timey word.
Yeah, that's really cool. I wish we would did that.
Yeah,
but yeah,
you know, it's right next door to your local alchemists.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, but I was in there, and there was a young woman who was, I believe, was either she would have been a pharmacy student, I guess, and she had some visible tattoos. Not a lot, like she didn't have like a whole sleeve or anything, but like there was a tattoo there, and there was one on her calf as well, because the pharmacist uniform is still stuck in the 1950s.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was there. You know, I didn't think much of it because I don't really care. But there was an elderly woman there who very much seemed to care, in that way that elderly people are. That they're just sort of like you know what I mean? Like they want to voice their displeasure, but they don't want to actually voice their displeasure. That kind of that tut.
Yeah, it's almost from that generation that it's almost like defacing yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be such a pretty girl if you didn't have all those tattoos.
I feel like she wanted to say that, but this young woman was a very stern-looking woman who, you know, was basically had her, I'm gonna make an assumption, her heart medication in her hands. So it was probably that whole, maybe I don't want to piss off my pharmacist. But, you know, she was she looked like she wasn't going to take any shit.
Yeah.
And, you know, this old lady was very much struggling with the whole, she really wants to tell her she'd be pretty if she didn't have these tattoos.
I hope that's my medication and not some LSD.
Yeah, right?
Sorry, we're blatant stereotyping here.
Yeah, but some stereotypes are there for a reason. And some are not. But, so I just kind of, it's been ticking in my head for a while, and then, you know, Twitter as it is, you know, seeing people talking about whether or not they should get tattoos, people who have tattoos talking about, you know, what they should get or why they probably shouldn't get one. You know, there's a whole the tattoo should mean something and should be personal to you, and then people are just like, if you like how it looks, get one. You know?
Yeah.
Because everybody's reason for getting one is different, and as far as I'm concerned, valid. But it got me thinking, when it comes to workplaces, there's still this overall stigma, like this chemist worker. And I thought about how other people would think about that particular topic, which, you know, granted in the circles we run in, which are relatively progressive, the results probably aren't aligned with the greater sphere of the world, but it's still interesting, some of these results that came out. I wanted to get the views of the other people about what they thought about this topic.
Absolutely. And bearing in mind, as a culture, and just quick for these people who don't know too much my background and who are new to us from the podcast, I have, of course, been born in Australia, but I've split my time roughly 50-50. I spent until I was just before I was 18 in Australia, moved to the UK, spent a good 15 years or so there, and then came back here. So I've roughly spent, well, it's a bit more the other way, but I spent about half of my life in Australia and half the UK. So I've got a bit of an idea of kind of different cultures. I mean, granted, they're both Western cultures, but Australia, in regards to how can I put this? You'd never go to the UK and see somebody going to the local supermarket in their PJs and bare feet. It's just not done. Australia has a very laid back, casual regard to their appearance. And I'm not trying to say Australians are slovenly. Don't think that at all. But we are just a lot more relaxed and casual about things in regards to dress. And I think, even though, like you said, there is that, it possibly carries over somewhat, but I think it's more of a generational thing. Still, like you said, that we do probably had quite a few younger generational people answer this, and that could be why it's overwhelmingly in favour of this. So
this country at least is one of these weird dichotomy things that at least in my experience is, like you said, we are very laid back in the way we kind of, we're not going to get dressed up to go down to the corner shop if you really don't have to. If it's just a quick run, yeah, we'll go down in our PJs and a dressing gown. Pick something up and come back. We don't really care. I mean, I wouldn't because, I don't wear PJs. But, so...
Well, that could be an entertaining trip.
Exactly. Going down to the groceries in my PJs is going to get me arrested. But
either it's a long trip or people let you cut queues.
No, I'd be using the self-checkout. Unexpected item in the bagging area. I'll give you an unexpected item in the bagging area.
Oh my word. There's so many things I could say right now, but most of them would probably be insulting, so I'll refrain. Yes.
For now, you will anyway.
Yes.
We'll get a couple of episodes in and they'll all come out. Don't you
Please
worry,
make sure you take all packages with you. Yes.
But we'll go through the breakdown. I mean, we're still a brand new podcast, so we didn't really get a whole lot of votes. I'm still tweaking the length of time we leave them up for. I have these up for about 3 days at a time for now.
Yeah.
But, we could leave them up for 5 days for more exposure. But it's one of those things where hopefully with the more people we get listening and wanting to give their opinions on different things, the longer we can leave them up.
Yeah, still, I'm pretty happy for, 18 votes for a first poll before it even actually started. I'm pretty happy with that, and I think you should be too.
Yeah, I am, especially since I didn't vote. I didn't. That's fine. I didn't put my vote in, but if I did, it'd go with the majority, to be honest. So the way these votes broke down was you got 18 votes total, and we got 12 votes for no at 66.7% of the vote. 5 votes for I don't care, which was 27.8%, and 1 yes vote at 5.6% of the vote. Now that 1 yes vote is interesting to me. Valid, obviously. There are different ways we did this one. No, I don't think there's a wrong answer because, again, everybody has different worldviews and experiences and different things that they bring to each question. So there's no wrong answer. There's just the way you feel about certain things. So that 1 yes, especially amongst like where they were before, I actually am kind of happy to see it, to be honest.
I mean, it could be slightly ambiguous because we also said regardless of work.
Yeah.
Then we also said professional environment.
That's true, and it could have been worded better, but I kind of thought about it in terms of, when you're in a workplace doing a job. That was the way I came from it. And
in a work environment. Yeah.
In a work environment, but not necessarily white collar office work, but any job where you are doing work for pay. That was ostensibly the point of the question. So my vote was honestly no. I don't think it's unprofessional to me, mostly because what is on my skin shouldn't and doesn't affect how I do my job. That's just how I see it. What's in my head. Mm-hmm. But I'll go ahead and see if you want to give your...
Oh, my answer's a long one.
Well, that's fine. Because, I mean, honestly, that's about the extent of it. Like, if I've got something on my arm, it's there because I want it to be. But that thing on my arm doesn't stop me from being able to clean your table after I've served it or whatever. It's not a problem to me. So that's just how I see it. But I get that there is also more to it that I may not be able to bring to the table. So go ahead, go nuts.
Like I said, I'm going to use a great word, 2 words, great term that I love here. Cognitive dissonance, because I do have this with this question. Now, the thing is, if I just see that sentence, do you think visible tattoos are unprofessional? snap response, top of my head, immediately says yes. And I know that's quite surprising because I actually voted no. And I know no because I actually had, in the last couple of months when I was looking for a new property to move into, I actually had one of our real estate agents that I was working with. And again, on the website, you know, professional picture, hair down, you know, the general middle part, straight hair, wearing, you know, business jacket, collared shirt, you know, the very generic real estate agent picture. And, you know, when I actually went to the viewing and saw her, she had like a 1/2-inch gauge, you know, had tattoos down both arms. And my first thought was actually, do you know that is really cool that they actually haven't forced her to cover up, and that it actually probably makes her a lot more approachable to a younger audience. But like I said, and I don't want to say blame, but I was brought up in a very military-oriented family. 3 generations back on both sides, history of service. And for those who don't know, they're like, oh, but military people have loads of tattoos. Yes, but they always must be covered by a summer uniform. So if they're wearing their short sleeve uniforms, they must cover all their tattoos. That's why you might see them on, you know, the bicep tattoos, but that's it. You know, my stepbrother's currently in the Australian Navy, you know, and he's the same, he's got a bicep on, but they all cover them. You know, it's the hair must be neat, you must be shaved. My biological father, he had to take a razor to work, he had to shave on his lunch break because otherwise he would actually get written up. You know, that is how serious they can be at the military. And I mean, you can't actually control how quickly the, you know, beard grows when you shave that morning and you look like you've got a 3-day growth of beard by the end of the day. That's not really your fault, but still, he had to do something about it because that's how it works in the military. So probably because of that, like I said, I am very programmed to have that. No, you must be very, you know, strict about your appearance. You know, and even my grandfather, after he got out of the military, he took a job with BMW and it was still very much the same. They actually stipulated you had to have your natural hair colour. Heck, they said not only do you have to wear blue, it must be in this range of blue because that's our BMW blue. They were that strict about it. So probably because I've grown up with that kind of automatic thing is in the back of my head, but actually seeing it and with experience in it, I don't get offended, for lack of a better term. You know, and like I said, it is becoming more common now. We actually had our state elections in the last 6 months. We had a local national candidate, and his profile picture, his campaign poster, was actually him in a singlet, and he had literally from, you know, the neckline and double sleeves tattooed, and that was his campaign poster. You know, and this is a politician. So if you're ever going to say somebody who's in a absolute professional environment, surely you would think somebody who's supposed to wear a suit and a tie, you know, to work. But no, it was obviously in a very casual way, and that's not at all what is commonplace, despite what we said about how people, you know, tend to dress in Australia. But, you know, he felt that it wasn't going to impact negatively on him. Well, you know, that just wasn't the Nationals' problem in her election, but that's getting completely off topic. But yeah.
I mean, given how this particular federal government has been acting in the last couple of months, I wouldn't exactly call them the most professional of people, personally. But but yeah, I see what you mean.
As a profession, not as people's actual, you know, politics. So yeah, there's kind of what my brain says, and there's how I actually act in reality, I suppose, is kind of different. And it wasn't even until I actually saw this, you know, particular girl, sorry, I should say woman, you know, that I even realised that I had this. You know, I was just like, well, you know, you cover them up. And that's something that's just kind of been, like I said, not even consciously, but it's just kind of been drilled into me from the particular way of my upbringing and what's considered not even acceptable. What's the, there's something I'm thinking of. Not rules, but what's this is your mandated appearance kind of thing, and it just kind of passively seeped into my brain. So yeah, I was kind of, that's why I said I did actually vote no, and that's in reality, but that's not my official snap judgment. So I actually found this quite interesting.
Yeah. So you said something about the the first thing that crossed your mind versus because of the way you were brought up and your experiences, and then how you approach this question in terms of what you personally think about it.
It's nature versus nurture debate. I suppose, kind of.
Something that came to my head was this quote, and I had to look it up just now, but I read it somewhere else. It was essentially, the first thought that goes through your mind is what you have been conditioned to think, and what you think next defines who you are. That's basically, in terms of what your initial thought is, what everybody has been telling you to think up to that point. It comes to the point where it's like, your first reaction is to be like, or whatever. It doesn't matter what the reaction is. The first one is the way your experiences and the way you've been brought up to react to those things based on those experiences. The second one is when your higher cognitive functions kick in. You start thinking about why you reacted that way and what you do next. And what results from that is what you truly are as a person. It's very vague. It's very general and very airy-fairy. But I think
I get it, and I actually think it does explain it very well.
Yeah, I think it kind of fits in that because it's one of those things where when you... Because I admit, when I first see visible tattoos, my first reaction is... I'm not going to say what my first reaction is, actually. Well... I grew up around tattoos. My father had one, my mother had one, my grandfather had one. My grandmother didn't. My aunt has one. But I'm fairly sure my grandmother wanted one and just has a very low pain threshold, so decided not to bother. But tattoos have been in my life for as long as I can remember. My mother's best friends. Tattoos were not a problem to me. So that may be part of why my initial reaction to tattoos is one of more curiosity than revulsion or whatever you want to call it, or being taken aback. But it's also one of those things where I have to stop and think about too, like the content of the tattoo. So some of the things I've been reading while researching this topic, and I admit I haven't done a lot of research because a lot of the things that I wanted to get this stuff for are paywalled behind paper windows. The scholarship articles are always paywalled. So I've really got most of my stuff through summaries, those bits at the beginning, and I went to university and I can't remember what the things were called at the beginning. But yeah, that was basically how I got my stuff. And it's one of those things where the attitudes are slowly changing over time and have been since, from what I read, I believe since the 60s and 70s, slowly as time goes on, as tattoo culture, I believe, has become more widespread and more accepted. We're talking about a generation that is like one behind our own.
Yeah.
We're talking about Generation X, the punk era, where tattoos were, fuck the system. You know what I mean? Like that was one of the most visual, hardcore ways at the time to
it was amazing and shocking. And now we have implants and scarification.
Yeah, exactly.
We've pushed the envelope beyond then to where tattoos are seen quite tame comparatively.
Yeah. But in the corporate world, it's not. It's slowly becoming less of a problem. But my interesting thing was with these results that, again, with the circles that we swing in, the more progressive and the general age range of that, it is interesting to see that, these are people who I assume, I know at least 2 of them are working people. They're working age. They go out and they work. They are front-facing people even.
Mm.
But, I didn't ask the locations and content of their tattoos, but a lot of the general opinion and vibe of people is that the tattoo doesn't affect how they do their job. And to them, the idea of being discriminated against or told to cover up or whatever that particular part of themselves just feels like putting, how do I say this? Not putting the cart before the horse, but it feels like putting too much power on a visual thing. Like, as if the company thinks that the tattoo is going to jump out and bite the client or scare them off or something. And it's just, that mindset, I think, is one that is slowly becoming more prevalent as we realize that, it's honestly the hiring pool that doesn't have some kind of body modification these days is getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
Because just by nature of how many people are just trying to push the envelope and do things that they think are cool or that they want to do even. Like, it doesn't matter why you do what you do to yourself. It's all valid, but as time goes on, more and more people are going to be searching for more ways of self-expression that include body modification, and that's just gonna be the way things go from here on out, to the point where you're essentially going to be looking for the golden goose if you're looking for somebody that doesn't have a sleeve of tattoos, a long beard, several bits of metal sticking out of their face, and in 20, 30 years, their eyes might light up and turn a different colour. Who knows?
Oh, tattooing eyeballs is just...
No.
Eyes. No.
But you know what I mean? Like,
quickly changing the subject, though. Bearing in mind that we are very much, as a society, I'm talking global society here, we are very shallow, and we look at a lot at advertising and, magazines to see what our ideal is supposed to be. And do you think that with the big rise in celebrities who now have tattoos on display, that has also changed and made some of that culture? Whereas, before, models would, again, it's like, well, I earn my living off using my body as a canvas for other people's clothing. So if I mark that with tattoos or something, I am reducing my value. Whereas now, you will see your latest Victoria's Secret show, and I use that because, they're seeing a lot of canvas. A lot of them have quite significant amounts of body art. You'll see a lot of actors and actresses now, and I've even noticed sometimes that they won't actually, as much as they used to cover them up for films, they aren't always doing it now. And I'm wondering how much of that's kind of contributing to our kind of cool factor.
I think it is having that. I mean, you can't really, the whole, it's social.
It's a chicken and egg argument here a little bit, isn't there?
Yeah, that's sort of, but it's more like I think everything, it takes, when, especially nowadays, when fame can be instant but also can be taken away very quickly. Fame is fleeting these days. You get 15 minutes of fame for a TikTok, and then next week nobody knows who you are. But that week that you are the big thing, that influences, especially with how interconnected we are these days, that influences millions of people.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're getting this point where, as technology starts to bring us closer together, whether or not so many people in authority don't want it to, and we start sharing things and participating in stuff like that, the whole social zeitgeist, as it were, inches along with those changes and things. So we may have started out with I believe, hip-hop artists, black hip-hop artists in the late 80s, early 90s, gangster rappers specifically with full-body tattoos, like Tupac and stuff.
Yeah.
They made that particular image cool and hip with the kids. You know, I'm starting to show my age here. But
because, again, that was a part of their all rebelling and maybe that tying into the whole and then, jailhouse tats culture kind of thing, you know. It's kind of...
Exactly.
You know.
Got into the celebrity culture. Celebrities, I mean, fairly sure celebrities before that had tattoos as well, but again, we had that cover-up culture. But when you've got gangster rappers who walk around with basically no shirt on, covered in tattoos, prison or no, the 90s becomes a system of that, with that whole... The 90s being that rebellious phase, the grunge phase, the screw, almost nihilistic screw humanity kind of thing. It's like, whatever, man. The world can burn, who cares? But it starts to come from that, I believe, that starts to cross over into movies and white culture. You know, you get more white musicians and artists and actors even coming out with showing more tattoos.
Yeah, it becomes more mainstream.
Yeah, it becomes more mainstream for good or ill. You know, white culture has a history of aping lots of black culture. So it comes along with that whole thing has slowly shifted along to the point where now we have, I mean, look at Lil Nas X, who is top to toe in them. Wow. First episode and already got to make an editor's note here. I was incredibly incorrect here. Little Nas X doesn't have all that many tattoos. I think what was in my head was the video for Montero, Call Me By Your Name, where he does have quite a lot of tattoos in it, but the man himself doesn't have that many. So, that one's my bad. Sorry. Or what's his name? Marble Mushmouth Post Malone. You know, face tat, like things written on his face, which even 10 years ago would be like, what? No, don't have a facial tattoo. That's tacky. Or something that serial killers would do. So I think we've come to this point where I think mainstream culture takes from a subculture and then just starts to bring it all in to the point where nowadays, you know, we're seeing more and more people who are proud of their body modifications, which personally, so they should be, because it's their way of self-expressing whatever was happening at the time or their history or whatever. Hell, they might like My Little Pony and get one on their shoulder blades. Who cares?
Yeah.
It doesn't affect you, so why do you give a shit? And I think that's part of where I think corporate culture, like everything else, is very slow, but it is changing to the point where I believe that now, while there is still uniform, as you said earlier, uniform things with BMW with different shades of blue and stuff, while you still have to have that particular uniform aspect to you, I believe a lot of corporate culture now is coming to the point where they are realizing that, one, times are changing, two, the pool of recruits to their company, their organization, is becoming smaller and smaller, that is untainted with visible tattoos, and is slowly starting to realize that what is on a person's skin doesn't detract from, or shouldn't detract from, the uniform. Because nobody is going to my mind at least, nobody is going to look at a guy dressed in a Toyota car dealer's uniform, which is probably black slacks and a red t-shirt with a white thing and a Toyota logo somewhere. Nobody's going to be looking at that and then look at his arms where he's got a tattoo of a double helix and go, oh, well, I don't want to buy a car from this guy because he's got that on his arm. Like, it doesn't make sense to me from that aspect, just personally. And again, it is very highly dependent on the content of the tattoo. Like, I don't think I'm going to buy a car from a dude with neo-Nazi stuff all over his arm, but I'm fairly sure that guy probably isn't going to go and apply for a job for a car dealership.
Well, yeah, and that's, again, that's not making a judgment on the fact of the tattoos. That's making an informed judgment on his,
Yeah.
views
And again,
based on those.
and it's also the matter of, like, those views may well have changed. Like, there was, like, that guy who, the guy in the US who literally reforms or talks to ex-neo-Nazis, and how these are people who they won't get rid of their tattoos despite the incredible hatred that was behind them, specifically because it reminds them of the problem. Because erasing those tattoos erases who they used to be and erases the mindset that they don't ever want to go back to. So, to me, the whole idea of you don't know that the guy who might have that tattoo on the inside of his forearm still believes that. That's a judgment. I think the judgment call is on us, not them. Because that guy might genuinely just be trying to sell you a car. And he has that tattoo there to remind him that this shit exists in the world out there. He used to be part of it, and he should never be again.
I can kind of understand that mentality, but it also kind of feels like an alcoholic leaving a bottle of whiskey up on the shelf to remind himself that he used to be an alcoholic.
Yeah, no, I see that.
Yeah.
My mother quit smoking and always had a packet of cigarettes, so I know where you're coming from. It's
that's kind of a testing the willpower thing.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, but yeah, it's one of those things where I get that, but I think to my mind, it's one of those things where it's like that Twitter cliche of the whole, be kind because you don't know what that person's been through.
Yeah, and it's the judging
experience.
Yeah, judging a book by its cover, which is kind of what this whole debate is about, really.
Exactly. Yeah. And when does judging a book by its cover become okay? And should it ever be okay? Because you don't judge a person by the clothes that they wear. At least you shouldn't. We still do. So why do we do it with tattoos, whether they're visible or not, or they're piercings, or because I'm going to lump piercings in with this as well because it's body modification.
Well, why not? It's our podcast. We can diversify
exactly.
if we want to.
Exactly. But yeah, like I mean, you can make the judgment that body modifications like piercings and stuff can be removed, where tattoos can't. But you're essentially still asking people to cover up something that is inherently a part of them and something that means something to them.
Yeah, and some people do choose to, as they do that. My sister-in-law, long-term goth, and she's
really?
chosen. It's great because she dresses her kids in pink because she doesn't want them to be a goth just because she is. But she's chosen. She had the lip rings, and she had. Was thinking about viper bites for a bit, and she's chosen to take them out now because she feels, that she's getting closer to 40 and that she should tone down her look, and that's her own choice. And she's got a sleeve, and at the same thing, she's quite happy to have more tattoos, and she doesn't feel like, she doesn't regret them at all, and doesn't feel like she should have to hide those, but she's made the choice with the facial piercings. It could also be that you lose them a lot and they're a pain, and that it could just be more trouble than it's worth, apparently, especially with lip rings. And
in my experience, at least one of my experience, young children tend to like shiny things.
Oh, they do. But yeah, it's interesting how even within people who have these, they have their own views on, or maybe I'm a bit old for piercings, but not tattoos, and people have their own kind of ideas of what they think is right and isn't right as they age, and, that's probably why I'd never get a tattoo, like you said, with writing on your face, because you imagine that when you've got a whole bunch of wrinkles and somebody's like, excuse me, can I just stretch your face so I can read it? You know.
How wrinkly do you expect me to get? But yeah, no, I think it's one of those things we do have to come up again with the caveat with this discussion is people change. And it's okay
Absolutely.
to do that. Everyone is allowed to change. The whole neo-Nazi discussion we had just a minute ago, and the changing in that perspective does happen. But it also happens in terms of, sometimes you just realise you don't want bits of metal in your face anymore.
Yeah, Dave really wasn't my true love after a week and a half, and maybe I should get that tattoo covered up.
Yeah, it's totally okay to change. But I think inherent to, or the very core here is, are we essentially forcing people to make that change when they don't want to, when we say cover that up or take that out?
Yeah.
Because it's not their choice at that point. If it's their choice, that's fine. That's just as it was their choice to get that lip ring or that nose ring or that tattoo, it should be their choice whether or not they want to cover it up, take it out, display it, or not. And I think at the heart of that for me is, if it's not affecting the way the person does their job, no matter what that job might be, I honestly couldn't care less if they look more like a sheet of chainmail than they do a human. Unless, of course, they work on power lines. But that's probably a safety issue more than a personal issue.
That could be amazing. Could you imagine, having, a chain... Oh. I have a very vivid imagination, and I sometimes get mental images.
That's what I had as well.
And it was, almost like this, Arabian Night-style veil, but of actual chain rings that were pierced into your face.
I saw a woman with thousands of sleepers on her face, just all the way down. They just cover it like a chainmail. That was what went through my head as well. I'm with you.
What would you do if you had to get an MRI? Wow.
Spend about an hour taking them all out.
I know. And could you actually get them back in?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Getting sidetracked. But yeah, it's... And I used this phrase before, and I almost came out with it by accident. Body autonomy. And I think that's kind of what the core idea is, that we feel like we're at a phase where we should have that body autonomy. And God, dare I extend this and stretch this out anymore? Women especially are familiar with this argument from what we wear.
Yes.
And it's the same kind of thing. It's having that being judged for how you choose to express yourself. And like you said, we're at that point where we're limiting our personal freedoms over our body to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. And where do we think that's fair? Is there a point where, okay, it might not be, if you've got 15 piercings in the back of your hands and you work in fast food, that may heat up and you may, be a safety hazard to yourself. Yeah. That's fair enough. Mm-hmm. But if you work as a receptionist and you're like, well, I don't know if anybody's going to want to, take a card from your hand because, oh no, they're scared they might get tetanus. That's just being a jerk.
Yeah. I mean, for the listener, we do have to say, there are way too many variables to discuss in this one little podcast about the ins and outs of body modifications and tattoos and things like that. Like safety hazards, personal hazards, personal grooming, all those kinds of things. They're all part of it. They're all massive amounts of things that go into it. And you have to take into account as well that, yes, an organisation has a responsibility to present a certain face to a certain degree. As much as you're gonna want to like Anna said, you're not gonna want to take your fast food from somebody who quite clearly hasn't washed their hair in 6 years and hasn't put it in a net, and has a whole bunch of piercings in their hand and lots of all that kind of stuff, because it's just one of those things where
I was more thinking hot oil, but yeah, if you're going with
they're working with food.
Yeah.
You know, they're working with food. This requires a highly clinical...
High level of hygiene and things that
Yeah, exactly. So you've got to take all of these things into account. But when you start coming into the point where, hence why the tattoo thing, it's under the skin, it's not coming back out. Does it matter if your receptionist has a swallow on her breastbone that is visible behind her collar?
Oh.
Or has a semicolon on her wrist?
Yeah.
Or a love heart? Or
the
whatever.
Other thing, a
Does
lot of
it
them
matter?
For charities and things like that are actually on the rise as well. But
yes,
so long
the
as
ribbons
it's
and things.
Yeah, not rude, not hate speech or otherwise offensive, I don't think there should be an issue. That's kind of my encapsulation takeaway here. I think regardless of what my mental conditioning may have taught me.
Yeah.
But and I think, don't worry guys, we're not always going to agree.
Oh, exactly.
We softballed this first one.
Yes. I did have another topic. I thought about going into this first episode with a bang, but I was like, no, let's go soft on this one. Let's try and ease things in, because we're both trying to work out the format and interactions and things, and this is a semi-deep kind of issue that you can talk about, and it can be revisited at a later stage.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But also it's something that, you know, it's kind of quote unquote easy to talk about, because it is literally just, you know, what do you think about visible tattoos, and does it really matter to you that much? And as I said, there's so many more variables to be discussed, but as Anna said, at the face of it, as long as it's not literally hurting anybody, I just don't care. It doesn't matter. Express yourself. You know,
if anything else, can be a great icebreaker. You know, how many times have you been in, and I've been in, you know, sometimes places of work as well, you know, and it's like, that is a great tattoo. Mm-hmm. And really, I mean, that's the reason why they're called tattoo artists. Some of these people are phenomenally talented. Mm-hmm. I mean, incredibly so.
Drawing on skin and making it look good is very difficult.
Yes. Anyone who's seen the attempts at Mark McGowan's face can easily attest it's very difficult. We love you, Mark, but those tattoos, I am sorry. And I know you're a little bit embarrassed about them, and I would be too.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much cleared that one up. At least, say cleared up. I'm not going to say cleared up. We're not going to make a definitive decision on this. We have decided that tattoos under the workplace are totally fine. You know,
thanks for your opinions. Here's why you're wrong.
Exactly. Judgment has been passed. No, but yeah.
Actually, in this is why you're right. And I'm sorry, I've just thrown half my water around and made an enormous loud bloop that he will now have to edit out. Yes. He's going to be listening to this back and going, what was that?
No, it's fine. But yeah, if you guys have any opinions, feel free to leave them in the comments, or, you know, throw us a response on the old Twitters there.
Once again, at pod_QS.
Exactly. And yeah, you can find me at One Life Zero Continues. The 1 is the numeral, and so is the 0. Where can people find you, Anna?
You can find me at Analog. That's ANNA for Anna. Log, LOGUE. I know, I'm so punny. Gaming, all one word.
And yeah, we will. We haven't decided on an what did you say? Extro?
An extro. Yes, I made that word. I'm proud of it. I am trademarking it.
We are running with it.
Yes.
We haven't decided on an extro, but
we've decided on our merch. Yes.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, check us out, and thank you very much for listening, and we will see you on the next one.
Take care, guys. Bye.